I thought I'd return to the final frontier to check back in with Star Trek The Early Voyages. And obviously had an interest in this to compare with the Strange New Worlds effort and all of that. And there's no comparison. Early Voyages, which is not a great series, does a far better job than Strange New Worlds and certainly STD and all that. So they had a couple of issues that I talked about where they set it up and everything and introduced new characters and what have you. But with this issue, first story I'm going to talk about, Our Dearest Blood, where we have a character we didn't know about, which was this male yeoman that was a good friend of Captain Pike's. And so, hey, where's the cute little redhead? Yeah, boy, was she something, huh? It's too bad she didn't stay on for more episodes, you know? It's just, I really feel cheated about that. But, so there's two issues here that delve into that, and they do a fair job of at least setting up Pike's attitude that you see in the cage, and a far better job on trying to make this work than Strange New Worlds did, which didn't try at all. So you had Yeoman Cusack, who was buddies with Pike and was his yeoman, and we get to the story of which you see in the cage that's reenacted by the Telosians in Pike's mind. And as the story is opening, there's already something terrible has happened, and this particular mission didn't go well. We don't get a whole lot of details from it, but Pike is on the verge in the cage. He talks to Dr. Boyce about, I'm ready to quit. I'm going to try to do something else. And because why is he so down the dumps and all that? And of course it says, well, this failed mission, So they recreate this fight he had with a giant warrior from these people on this planet that he was on and all of that. So what was the story behind that? Well, this issue deals with that. This was a planet that were seeking membership in the Federation, and but there was a faction that was against it because they felt it required them to abandon their warlike barbarian ways. And so this sect of the community is rebelling against it, and they attack Federation officers and all that sort of stuff. And ultimately you end up with the battle that is depicted in the cage, but this would be the actual battle with one of those warriors and all of that. Meanwhile, the Yeoman Cusack, through these series of events, is mortally wounded and dies. The doctor tries to save him but can't. And this puts, this is very depressing for Pike, and he's all distraught and upset by the end. It just puts him in a deep depression over it. So that goes a long way of explaining Pike's attitude that you do see in the cage where he's wanting to quit and all that. So the next issue follows up on that. And it retells the events of the cage, but in a different way, and they jump right in where Pike's already captured. He's with Vina, and Number One and Yeoman Colt are transported into the cage because Vina's not doing the job, so the Telosians say, well, we'll bring some more females in here. So they give him a harem. And that's where it opens, but the story is told through the eyes of Yeoman Colt. Now we know that she's a successor of a recently deceased yeoman who was Pike's buddy, and so he's cold and distant towards her and doesn't really give her a chance, and she can't seem to say the right thing and all that, and this is obviously troublesome for her. And the Telosians put her in through some illusions that recalls her former life, where she broke up with a boyfriend to join Starfleet or go into a different ship than he was going to, or what have you, and that kind of thing. And they're teasing her, you can relive this moment the way you would want, and she says, no, I made my choice and all that. That's how they're trying to tempt her. Just aspects of it that you didn't get to see, whether there was actual time for that to have occurred. Well, they do show. They cut to a scene and then come back and they're all asleep, and that's when Pike manages to catch one of the Telosians coming into the cell. And so I guess that's when they were doing that. But in that, they just give more depth to the character, and they're staying within the limitations that are already set, which is something STD and Strange New Worlds just refuses to do. And so that's all very good. So they show this difficult relationship between Pike and Colt there, even though within the show she did have an attraction for him because the Telosians read her mind. So did number one. Because, it was, especially with Colt, she says that she has unusually strong female drive. And she's like, oh, God damn it, don't say that out loud. Of course, Pike's too busy trying to be really hateful and mad at the Telosians so he can break their control, Because later on, he's like, holy crap, man. These chicks are really into me. So that's how they do it. There's this other element. She witnesses trouble with Dr. Boyce that it's a plot thread for a later issue of a mystery concerning him. Even though that's the one thing they do get wrong. I mean, he looks absolutely nothing like Philip Boyce in the original series, and I don't know why they did that. But anyway, so there you are. It's just that's one of the strong elements, and the significance of it is it's a forgotten series. It didn't last long from the late 90s, but it's just and it's got problems here and there, but it's just far superior to what Secret Hideout has done with Star Trek. Obviously, it's like, well, it wouldn't take much. You got fan films that are superior and all that, but it's just which makes it all the more sad about how easy these comic book guys sat there and decided, well, let's see, what can we do? We'll watch that show and see what the parameters are, how far can you go, and all that. Another thing so far, there's 2 more issues coming. And I'll just do those 2. It's a 2-parter where they're seeking to rescue another Federation ship, which is one of these cool designs of the past style placed on the styles of the movie ships, where you had the Reliant from Wrath of Khan. But they just do an old style version of it, same modeling where the nacelles are and everything. But that's the ship they're looking for, and the crew's missing and all this stuff. Well, it turns out they've been captured by yet another sect of aliens who don't want to go along with the modern styles and beliefs and cultures. Well, it turns out they're a tribe of long-lost Vulcans who split off from Vulcan before the religion of pure logic happened. And so they're still barbaric, and they have super duper pooper scooper weapons and all this sort of stuff. And Spock's like, oh man, he's rather surprised, and all that sort of stuff. They're very violent and brutal and very dismissive of Pike and whatnot, but at the same time, there's there's 2 splits. One would rather they just stay on their own world, which is probably for the best, and the other, the leader of them actually wants to go back to Vulcan and take it over. And they've got this doomsday weapon that ends up destroying the whole planet and everything like that. Some of it, fine that you run into these old Vulcans, but it's kind of the same thing as I always thought that the Romulans, because they say that they're related, that the Romulans would have been a derivative culture from the original Vulcans from way back when, and that sort of thing, since they don't practice logic and they're warlike and all that sort of stuff. They're not quite barbaric or anything. They're very cold and calculated in how they conduct themselves. But it made it sound like the Vulcans were more like Klingons in the past and stuff like that. And that's kind of how these guys are presented in this story. But and there's one other scene. They had the scene where these Vulcans managed to board the Enterprise in a battle, and the bridge crew with 2 women take on these Vulcans and kick their ass, and I'm just like, no. Let's see it come up with, they disabled the gravity controls or or something to even the odds, but Vulcans are well established to have superhuman strength, and I mean, I know they had Spock and Kirk but they had weapons, and Kirk managed to use a lead pipe against him one time, and then there was the fight where Spock was, the pon farr and everything, but of course Kirk lost that, albeit with some shenanigans on McCoy's part, but still, you're just not going to win with that raw strength that they have. And certainly these more warlike Vulcans, game over. So it was pretty stupid. Should have come up with some means by which they outfoxed them or something like that. But overall, the interesting aspect of this story is that it's really the primary Spock-centric type story, but not quite. I mean, he's there. He's the one explaining this, trying to the humans and everything. And there's some nods towards him and whatnot, but there's not this overall focus on him, which is the mistake that the TV shows do with STD and Strange New Worlds. It's like if you were going to do a Captain Pike era, Spock's going to have to be relegated to the position that a Sulu or Chekhov did in the original series, because otherwise you start exploring his journey that you saw in that series and then later into the films. And if you do that, then he's already done it. Why would he do it again? So there are some things coming up in other issues where they sort of toss sparks of that, which just goes to show, I guess it's just as well that this series was not successful, because where else are you going to go? It's a limited time, So it probably should have just said, this is a limited series. We're just going to explore that. And the only other thing to do would have been to follow up with an even further, younger Pike in some other adventure, maybe not even on the Enterprise, if you wanted to, but, there's only so much you can do. So, again, but I think that's a better approach with Spock, to not be, front and center, certainly not all the time, because you start stepping on the toes of his story that's already well established. So he's a lower ranking officer at this point. He's a younger Spock, and so for the most part, he's in the background, and you concentrate more on Pike and I guess number one, which they do in this. So it's another example of just how much superior it is, despite not being all that great. It's okay here and there. But, stupid stuff like them beating the Vulcans like that, it's just like, no, that's not going to happen. Not like that, anyway. But all in all, a fairly decent comic book run of these particular issues for the early voyages of Star Trek. And it's probably best to just think of these as canon rather than Strange New Worlds, which doesn't even try.